Loki told Luffy that if he undid his chains, he would destroy any pirate crew Luffy wanted. 10 chapters after this promise, Luffy has now freed Loki, and it may well be that Luffy will soon send Loki out on a special mission, where we could see Loki sailing out of Elbaf to save Garp from the Blackbeard Pirates. We are told repeatedly in the Elbaf arc that Loki is someone not to be trusted, where his own brother called him a liar, who betrays others without a second thought, and even before this, Loki was described as someone who causes nothing but misfortune wherever he goes. An important thing to note, however, is that Loki's reputation of being untrustworthy only comes from other people, and from what we've actually seen of him, this reputation already seems very inaccurate. In reality, Loki could be described as being someone who's incredibly honest. When Shamrock came to Loki with the offer of freeing him and making him a celestial dragon, Loki was essentially given the perfect opportunity to lie. Even though Loki doesn't like the celestial dragons, he was literally given a get out of jail free card, where he could have just played along and pretended to accept Shamrock's deal to get himself freed. What happened instead, however, is that Loki threw the offer in Shamrock's face and said he'd never become scum like him. Loki not only does this, but he decides to stick to his decision no matter what. The Gods Knights basically put Loki through hell, where they start slaughtering his pets and torturing Loki himself, and they tell Loki that he could stop them at any moment by simply accepting their offer. Yet, Loki keeps refusing them, when he could have very easily just lied. This goes completely against Loki's reputation as a deceiver, and is actually more aligned with the warrior spirit of Elbaf we've known throughout the story. Ever since Little Garden, it's been made clear that the Giants are people who keep their promises, and Loki clearly sees himself as this kind of proud warrior of Elbaf. If Loki's reputation is indeed inaccurate, now that he's been freed by Luffy, Loki may well keep his words from before and wipe out any pirate crew Luffy wants, and this could be something the story has been setting up for quite a few chapters now. Loki is no stranger to the world outside Elbaf, where it is said that he had his fight with Shanks out on the sea, and there are several hints that Loki himself was in fact a pirate who ventured out into the new world. Where Elbaf is known as a land of pirates, Loki himself wears pirate regalia, there's a huge bounty on Loki's head, and someone like Jinbei had already heard of Loki before the arc. The idea of Loki leaving Elbaf is also brought up in this latest chapter, where Odo literally thinks about Loki sailing out of the island and raising hell overseas after he is freed. There is also a good chance Luffy himself would also think it is a good idea to send Loki away. The only reason why Luffy wants to free Loki is because he has information on Shanks. When Kaban asks Luffy what he'll do if things go bad after Loki is freed, Luffy simply says that he'll beat Loki and lock him up again. If Loki does indeed intend to keep his word to Luffy, Luffy may well realize that sending Loki outside Elbaf is the best solution. Even if Loki isn't as bad as they say, him walking free on the island may well cause the other giants to panic, and possibly even turn on Luffy. If Loki were to leave Elbaf though, Luffy both gets to hear what he knows about Shanks, and avoids ruining his friendship with the giants, where he could even spin a tale of his own to the giants that someone else freed Loki. However, there could be an even bigger reason why Luffy might want to use Loki, where Luffy might currently genuinely need his help. If Luffy reads the news and hears what is going on in the world, he could realize that something has recently happened to his grandfather. As all of you know, in the previous arc, Garp attacked Pirate Island and ended up being imprisoned by Blackbeard's crew. From what we know, the public does not actually know what happened to Garp, and the only thing the news says is that he disappeared. What was however in the news was that Kobe was both captured and later freed from the Blackbeard Pirates. The Straw Hats are aware of Kobe's relationship with Garp, and the smarter members of the crew could piece together what happened, where Garp likely freed Kobe, and he himself could have ended up in Blackbeard's hands. Very recently in the story, Luffy decided not to go after Vivi after hearing about her disappearance, where he agreed with Zoro to do the same thing he had done with Ace, where it was to trust Vivi and go help her only if she was in mortal danger. If Luffy thinks that Garp has been captured by Blackbeard, the same man who caused the death of Ace, he may see that this is exactly the type of mortal danger he was talking about before, and that his grandfather would need his help. There could also be another reason why the Straw Hats would want to face the Blackbeard Pirates right now, where Blackbeard has recently captured Charlotte Pudding. If Sanji learns that his almost-to-be wife is in danger, he may well push Luffy to act. However, there is also a problem, where the Straw Hats at the moment may simply not be able to go to Pirate Island, because of what is going on in Elbaf. The island is currently under attack by the gods' knights, where they are targeting the country's children. The knights are very literally trying to kidnap them and force the giants to submit to the world government, and the giants by themselves may not be enough to combat this threat without the Straw Hats' help. Because of what happened a few years ago with Loki, Elbaf ended up losing most of its strongest warriors, and the gods' knights at many points in the story have been referred to as the Celestial Dragon's elite fighters, where Shamrock went as far as saying that Gungo could have beaten Loki, even if he wasn't chained up. If the gods' knights are even half as strong as we're led to believe, the Straw Hats' immediate concern would be to stay on Elbaf to help the giants deal with them. Arguably, after the beating he just got from Gungo and Cerberus, Loki is also currently in no condition to help, and might need at least a day or two to recover. This could then lead to Luffy making his decision, where he would decide that Loki could be used better elsewhere. Luffy could send Loki to go rescue Garp and Pudding, while Luffy himself would remain on Elbaf to deal with the enemies there. While Luffy likes fighting his own battles, he also is not above asking for help when people he cares about are in danger. What is also interesting is that only a few arcs ago, Sanji would have been set on him being the one who would need to rescue Pudding, but the events of Whole Cake Island have made him a changed man. Sanji is now also willing to ask others for help, and could well agree to the idea of letting Loki rescue Pudding. So, it could be that Luffy and Loki will reach a perfect agreement, where Luffy will stay behind on Elbaf to deal with the gods' knights, while Loki sails out of the island to face the Blackbeard Pirates. This could also further highlight that Loki is in fact a man of his word, where the thing he currently clearly wants most of all is to get revenge on Shamrock and Gungo, but he would choose to honor his promise to Luffy over his own desire for vengeance. Still, Loki going for Blackbeard is honestly just one idea. There's genuinely a lot of ways I could see the Loki situation turning out, where he could for example initially help the Straw Hats with the knights, and only then leave the island. Loki is just such an Elbaf-centric character that it could be a shame for him to leave so early, and I feel like the arc would also be a lot more interesting if Luffy has to deal with the giants thinking that he betrayed them. Furthermore, there is the fact that Luffy has not yet gotten to hear any news about what is happening in the outside world. I do think that we will get a payoff to Loki's promise to Luffy about destroying any pirate crew for him at some point, as it's both such an interesting idea, and Loki does very much seem to be a man of his word. I also think it is very convenient that Loki specifically said he was going to wipe out a pirate crew, as Elbaf is one of the few arcs in the story where the enemies are in fact not pirates. What I do however struggle with is thinking of targets other than the Blackbeard Pirates for Loki. There's really no other pirate crew in the story that Luffy genuinely hates other than them, and even if he has other rivals like the Cross Guild, Luffy is someone who wants to personally face these kinds of challenges to prove that he is the Pirate King. With the Blackbeard Pirates, however, because they've captured people who are dear to the Straw Hats, Luffy would probably realize that this is not the time to be competitive. This is also why I don't think Luffy would for example send Loki to hunt down the man marked by flames to get the last road Poneglyph, since I think Luffy would see the last Poneglyph as an adventure he wants to complete with his own crew. I do however think there is one more wild card in this discussion, which is the Big Mom Pirates. While the status of this crew is still extremely vague at the moment, the constant references to Big Mom in this arc, and her past with the giants still makes me think that she'll return to the story and come to Elbaf. These references extend to this very chapter, where it is said that Elbaf's biggest weaknesses are fire and lightning, and Big Mom is one of the few characters in the story who controls both elements. Then there is also the fact that Loki has personal history with her, where he almost married Lola and allied with Big Mom in the past. It also very much looks like the Gods Knights are only the villains of the beginning of this arc, where the story is already setting up Shamrock leaving Elbaf, and based on what we saw in Egghead, characters who use the magic circles can also be sent back without even having to be fully defeated. So, it could well be that Loki will for now stay on Elbaf, and that his promise to Luffy will keep being a Chekhov's gun, and it will only be used when the real main villains of the arc come to the island. While we're on the topic of past One Piece characters appearing in Elbaf, I'm pretty sure that a lot of fans, myself included, immediately thought about Enel in this chapter, when Ripley told her story about lightning destroying one of Elbaf's villages. This is something that is beat by beat from Enel's playbook, where Skypiea made it clear that Enel has both the ability to destroy settlements with his lightning, and that he's someone who does this just for the heck of it. The Elbaf arc has also already brought back a lot of other motifs that were used with Enel, where the top level of the Adam tree is literally called Heaven World, and we also saw what looked exactly like Arc Maxim on the mural Frankie found. While this is not evidence that Enel is literally on the island, this is something One Piece has done in the past when it's about to bring back an old character. Before Sabo was, for example, brought back in Dressrosa, we had rather recently gotten a cover page where we saw that someone had brought flowers and sake cups to Ace's grave. Technically, I suppose there would be nothing stopping Enel from doing something like flying his arc to the top of the Adam tree and being a hidden menace to the giants. There would still be a question of his motives though, since from what we know, all Enel essentially wanted was to live on the moon, which was something he achieved in his cover story. So there would have to be a special reason for him to come back to the planet. For a more wild theory, it could still be that this lightning strike was not a natural disaster, and that someone other than Enel was behind it. To me, it would be incredibly surprising if we finished the Elbaf arc without the story introducing a mythical Zoan based on Thor, simply because there are so many references to the Norse god of thunder throughout One Piece. I suppose one theory could be that a Thor devil fruit is in fact the legendary fruit passed along the royal line of Elbaf, and this village being destroyed is the work of its user. For a more crazy idea, it could have possibly been destroyed by Harald, since there's currently a lot of evidence that he was someone who was genuinely loyal to the world government, and I personally speculate that Harald could have in fact even hated his own race. A detail I find really interesting about the Elbaf arc so far is that we are essentially cycling through the different Straw Hat dynamics. First, we open the arc with the Alabasta era Straw Hats getting to have their own mini adventure in Rhodo's house. Then, we switch it up to the original trio of Luffy, Zoro and Nami exploring the Giant's Castle. Now, we are getting a little bit of it just being the original duo of Luffy and Zoro, and with Sanji coming to the scene, it appears that the next dynamic we are going to be focusing on is the Monster Trio. This is super cool. I genuinely wouldn't have minded 10 more chapters with either the Alabasta era crew or the original trio, and it's a bit sad that we only seemingly got one chapter of it just being Luffy and Zoro. Now that it's a clear trend, I'm also fairly certain that the arc will keep this up, and that we'll see more of these old dynamics play out, like some chapters focused on just Luffy and Usopp, or just Zoro and Sanji. It's also looking promising that Elbaf will be an arc that genuinely focuses on the crew, which we arguably haven't gotten since Whole Cake Island. I also think this chapter is just another example of the story taking its sweet time with Elbaf, where pretty much the only plot-relevant part of the chapter was Loki being freed, and other than that, it was completely focused on character interactions. I'm still sticking to my prediction that Elbaf will in fact end up being One Piece's longest arc, and that it'll even surpass Wano, where I think the arc has barely even gotten started. Just saying, you think Oda loves Japan? Just wait till you hear how much he loves Vikings. I also have a conspiracy theory, where Oda could be deliberately doing these slower paced Elbaf chapters, because he's on the side working on the chapter set outside the island. I genuinely think we might very soon pan outside Elbaf to see what, for example, the other Yonko, the government, or the revolutionaries are doing. And the story may already be setting this up with Saint Summer saying that the situation in the Holy Land keeps getting worse. This chapter also gave us one of the most clear-cut cases of Luffy's personal morals, with him saying that anyone who becomes his friend is off the menu. Sadly, I think this means that the theory about Luffy eating Chopper is not actually going to come true. On a more serious note, This is actually literally how Chopper was recruited, where Luffy literally considered him to be on the menu before they became friends. One final thought about this chapter is how strong Loki could possibly be with just one of his legs chained to seastone. From what we know in the story, even minimal contact with seastone means that you cannot use your devil fruit powers, like we for example saw with a single seastone nail stopping both Law and Orochi. You still can however access some of your physical abilities, where both Luffy and Kid for example were able to do prison labor while cuffed. So, Loki lifting his hammer may not just be for show, and he may actually be able to do something even in his current wounded state with a leg trapped in seastone. Though personally, I think he'll at the very least be friendly towards Luffy and Zoro for freeing him. I don't really have anything to say about this latest cover page, since it genuinely is just the last chapter's cover page from a different angle. By the way, Oda in his latest SBS revealed that Ulti and Page 1 were the children of Hanafuda, the warlord defeated by Ace, and that Hanafuda himself was later killed by a pirate who had a grudge on him. Considering how over-the-top brutal Who's Who is being with Ulti and Page 1, it makes me wonder if he could have been the pirate who also killed their dad. No idea what his grudge would be though. Maybe Hanafuda was just a Shanks fan, or something. Ahoy matey. Now that you've sailed to the end of this video here, it is time the wallet be plundered. This channel just took a new victim by the name of Joshua N and stole all his treasure from him. I cannot believe this is how I'm now advertising channel memberships, but I can't think of anything more interesting. So yeah, do check out the membership option if you want to give me extra support. And as always, thanks a lot for watching this video to the end.